Hey, what's good? Welcome back. I'm Brittany Sunshyne. This is Seed Soil Water, where we pursue knowledge for deeper roots and brighter blooms. And we are right in the middle of learning about how to break the habit of being ourselves by studying Dr. Joe Dispenza, The Selfish Self. Oh no. As you can see, what we identify as ourself exists within the context of our collective emotional association with our thoughts and our feelings, our problems, and all those elements of the big three, which remember is the body, the environment, and time, which is so funny because, by the way, time isn't even linear. So it's like if we could take the time, the like trip about time out of it. I told us a story in the last video. By the way, this is a series, so check the playlist, add the playlist to your playlist so that you don't lose us, so that you can continue to keep watching. But anyway, I was telling a story about how I was in a real predicament based on some choices that were made by somebody I was connected to, and therefore there were some big things happening, and time was definitely going to be kind of that like impossible, like how is this ever going to be okay? How am I going to recover? And anyway, just by simply not tripping about the time and utilizing these universal principles, things work out. So let's keep going. So the big three. Is it any wonder that people find it so hard to go within and leave this self-produced reality behind? How would we know who we are if it weren't for our environment, our bodies, and time? That's why we are so dependent upon the external world. We limit ourselves to using our senses to define and cultivate emotions so that we can receive the physiological feedback that reaffirms our own personal addictions. We do all this to feel human. When our survival response is way out of proportion to what is happening in the outer world, that excess of stress response hormones causes us to become fixated within the parameters of self. So we become overly selfish. We obsess about our bodies or a particular aspect of our environment, and we live enslaved to time. We're trapped in this particular reality, and we feel so powerless to change, to break the habit of being ourselves that we've spent our whole life creating, right? These excess survival emotions tip the scales of a healthy ego, the self that we can consciously refer to when we say I. When the ego is in check, its natural job is to make sure that we are protected and safe in this outer world. As an example, the ego makes sure that we stay far away from a bonfire or a few steps away from the cliff's edge. When the ego is balanced, its natural instinct is self-preservation. There's a healthy balance between its needs and those of others, its attention to itself and to others. When we're in survival mode in an emergency situation, it makes sense that the self should take priority. But when chronic long-term stress chemicals push the body and the brain out of balance, the ego becomes over-focused on survival and puts the self first to the exclusion of anything else. We're selfish all the time. Thus, we become self-indulgent, self-centered, self-important, full of self-pity and self-loathing. I am so sick of saying the word self. When the ego is under constant stress, it's got a me first priority. Using those conditions, the ego is primarily concerned with predicting every outcome of every situation because it is over-focused on the outer world and feels completely separated from the 99.99999% of reality. In fact, the more we define reality through our senses, the more this reality becomes our law. And material reality as law is the very opposite of the quantum law. Whatever we place our awareness on is our reality. Consequently, if our attention is focused on the body and our physical realm, and if we become locked into a particular line of linear time, then this becomes our reality. Okay, let's say that again. If our attention is focused on the body and our physical realm, and if we become locked in to a particular line of linear time that is actually not real, then this becomes our reality. And so that, and by the way, like some of this, we do need to be aware of our body and the physical realm around us. Like have you ever met somebody who's not connected to their body at all? or to the physical realm around them at all, like that's problematic also. So there's balance in this. And that's why this whole channel and Seed Soil Water is all about pursuing personal development, spiritual development for the balance of that produces deeper roots and brighter blooms. And Seed Soil Water Spa is the audio spa channel where you can go and in balance, like think about it. If you were to just lay around all day, only listening to meditations, only doing visualizations, never actually putting the what you learn or experience into action outside of yourself, then all these principles would not really serve you. But when you do it in balance with activity in the 3D, then amazing things happen. To forget about the people that we know, the problems that we have, the things that we own, and the places we go, to lose track of time, to go beyond the body and its need to feed its habituations, to give up the high from emotionally familiar experiences that reaffirm the identity, to detach from trying to predict a future condition or review a past memory, to lay down the selfish ego that is only concerned with its needs, to think or dream greater than how we feel, and to crave the unknown. This is the beginning of freedom from our present lives. Woo, that's exciting. If our thoughts can make us sick, can they make us well? Should I tell the story now or later? Let's read it first. Let's go one step further. I explained earlier that we can turn on the stress response by thought alone. Just having like a thought can literally turn on and activate your body into full fight, flight, fawn, freeze, freak out mode. So if you can, and that's why in the word reference here, when I say the word, I mean Bible. What the Bible says is take every thought captive according to the knowledge of truth, of deliverance, of liberation, of you're okay, it's safe, you don't have to worry, you have backup, salvation. And, you know, of course, religion has really botched a lot of things. So don't even get me started. We don't have time to divide it all right now. But the point is, this is how important that is. And do we not live in a generation that is that's with chronic anxiety because we don't know how to take our thoughts captive? And in my personal conspiracy theory, put on my tinfoil hat, I believe we were purposely programmed as children with those toxic Disney movies where we're reliving Bambi's parents dying and frickin' Dumbo. I mean, we lived through some of the most tragic, heartbreaking. If you had any level of empathy, then you went through life-altering, emotionally destroying things 4 to 5 times a day, depending on how many times you watched your favorite Disney movie. Like, that cannot be good for us. So we became addicted to living through tragedy, stress, terror, heartbreak, and now we're programmed with that. We've become that. That's our identity, because literally everything we're reading in this book right here. By the way, this is a playlist. Save the playlist to your account and come back and watch all the videos, because this is so life-changing. I wouldn't be spending my time doing this if it were not life-changing. Okay. So we've all memorized how to be anxious. So how do you unmemorize that, right? Okay. So let's go one step further. He says, I also mentioned the scientific fact that chemicals associated with stress pull the genetic trigger by creating a very harsh environment outside of our cells and thus creating disease. So by pure reason, our thoughts can actually make us sick. That's why they say stress kills. If our thoughts can make us sick, might they also make us well? Let's say that a person had some experiences within a short time frame that caused him to feel resentful. As a result of his unconscious reactions to those occurrences, he held on to bitterness. Chemicals corresponding to this emotion, which we know is low vibe, then flood the cells. Over weeks, this emotion turned into a mood, which continued for months and changed into a temperament, which was sustained for years and formed a strong personality trait called resentment. In fact, he memorized this emotion so well that the body knows resentment better than the conscious mind, because he remained in a cycle of thinking and feeling, feeling and thinking, thinking and feeling that way for years. Based on what you learned about emotions as the chemical signature of an experience, wouldn't you agree that as long as this person clings to resentment, his body will react as though it is still experiencing the long ago events that first caused him to embrace this emotion? Moreover, if his body's reaction to those chemicals of resentment disrupted the function of certain genes, and this sustained reaction kept signaling the same genes to respond in the same way, might the body eventually develop a physical condition such as the big C word? Not that C word, cancer. So inappropriate. Somebody needs to reel this one in, reel it in. Okay, but real quick, what was I thinking while I was reading that? The whole idea about time, like really, when we really keep the revelation in check, that time is not linear. It's something that we just use to measure. It matters, and it will cause us to pay attention to what we are carrying with us still in our subconscious or our conscious, because mind, by the way, subconscious or conscious mind, because like if you're still carrying the resentment from something that happened 20 years ago, it's as if it's happening again every day, and you're living in the toxic filth of the thing that should have been let go of. And by the way, real talk, sometimes you need to go through some supportive environments and experiences to actually clear things out of your subconscious mind. Hashtag go to SeedSoilWater Spa channel, the audio spa. It's our sister channel to this one. Subscribe there, because I make physics informed meditations and visualizations with the actual frequencies that are supportive for transformation, for healing. And also there are people out there who know this stuff, and you can meet with them and they will help support you in that journey of liberating your body from the energetic trash that it's carrying around, because it feels like it's safety to keep holding on to it when it's really just continuing to pollute the atmosphere instead of protecting you from anything. It is counterintuitive to our lizard brain, who is sure that our lizard primal brain is like, no, you need to hold on to this because it's how you're going to know, you're safe if you are constantly afraid, when really it's just actually wreaking havoc in your being. Okay. Back to the book. If so, is it possible that once he unmemorized the emotion of continuous resentment by no longer thinking the thoughts that created the feelings of resentment, and vice versa, that means also not feeling the feelings that remind him of the thoughts, by no longer thinking the thoughts that created the feelings of resentment, and vice versa, his body as the unconscious mind would be free from that emotional enslavement. In time, he would stop signaling the genes the same way. And by the way, this is why another reason why visualization and meditation, and just literally like putting your imagination into the forward future of like, oh, and it doesn't have to be real right now. You're not gaslighting yourself as if what's going on in your 3D world isn't going on, but it's simply prophesying, it's planting seeds, it's making a declaration for the future that, yeah, I used to have trust issues because I was unaware of what a safe person's energy felt like. But now my intuition is so on point that my life attracts healthy, good, positive, rooted, healed, balanced people. And it repels anybody that's not a healthy, energetic match to my life. And it's crazy because when you start declaring things like that, when people fall away, it's like, oh, okay, well, life is just doing what it does. Life is my best friend. Life knows what's going on around here. And I don't have to control these relationships. I can just keep moving forward, knowing that life brings to me good and it repels what is not good for me. And it doesn't have to be personal. It's just everybody's at their own point in the journey. And it's just, there's just such a relief and an exhale and a surrender that you can really just like rest into. And for those of us who have been forced to live out of our divine masculine, all of us have both. So for those of us women, especially, who have been forced to step up into divine masculine because whatever the masculine was in our life wasn't doing their part, you don't have to have a divine masculine, by the way, to step into your divine feminine. It just requires healing your own self. And then you get to really rest into being that divine feminine and make sure you got your boundaries set up, because when you rest into that divine feminine, the callers come calling. Let's just say that. Okay. To such a degree that he invented a new ideal of himself related to a new personality. As he moved into a new state of being, he might he signal his genes in beneficial ways and condition the body into an elevated emotional state ahead of the actual experience of good health? Could he do this to the extent that the body would begin to change by thought alone? What I just described in simple terms happened to a student in one of my seminars who overcame cancer. And I will take this quick moment to let you know that I read Dr. Joe Dispenza's book. Well, I don't even think I finished it, but the point is I learned from his book, I think Becoming Supernatural, maybe. Whatever the book is that he wrote where he visualized his body healing, because he was in a very extreme accident that crushed his body. So according to all the medical science, he was like not going to pull out. There wasn't a lot of hope for him. I think they were concerned he was even going to walk again. So anyway, he laid in bed and visualized like his cells healing and stuff. So with that knowledge, like him learning that from him, and also with my just complete faith in the spirit, when I was pregnant, I fell on the stairs and broke 3 ribs while I was like 28 weeks pregnant, I think. So I was already pretty big, and this baby inside of me was only going to be growing bigger. I already had it lined up that I was going to do a natural water birth again, just like I did with my first son. And when I went to the ER and they did x-rays and they were like, yeah, you have 3 broken ribs. And I told her, I was just like devastated. I was like, I want to have a natural water birth. I don't want to have a hospital birth. And she was like, the ER doctor was like, I beg you to not even consider having a water birth. Like, she's like, because she's picturing like how much pain. Because yeah, it was, oh my gosh, if you've never had broken ribs, oh, I'm like having a whole moment remembering like how painful it is. And it was, it makes my stomach churn. Even just like blowing on that thing, because you like breathe less deeply because it's so painful. So they give you this thing, you have to blow in it to try and make sure you're using your lungs so that you don't get pneumonia. And just even that, like everything was so painful. I had a 2-year-old that didn't understand, almost 2-year-old that didn't understand like broken ribs, and he would like jump on me. Oh my gosh, I could almost vomit from the pain. It was so painful. So I would lay in bed because there wasn't much else I could do. And I would visualize this golden, like electric light. I didn't even know what ribs really looked like, but I just would imagine like the broken pieces being fused together with this electric fireworks kind of like zinging light. And I just was like, everything's healing, everything's healing. Anyway. And then this one day where, of course, I didn't feel like doing anything, I actually went to a prayer group, and I had already been priming the pump, expecting this healing. Oh, I could vomit. I still like am just feeling that pain. It was horrible. But anyway, I went to, and we prayed about my ribs and I like had a miracle. I was able to, I'll never forget, like pulling myself in the car, pregnant, and then like, you scoot in the car and you kind of have to, it's crazy how many how many movements use the muscles that are around your ribs. And the first, like, that was the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, this actually happened. Like, I got in the car, pulled myself over, and what was excruciating to do that movement all of a sudden was not. And then I went to bed, and like the next thing is I pushed a drawer. That was like excruciating before. And I was like, my ribs are just straight up not broken anymore. Like, how do you fake that? How do you fake that? So anyway, utilizing this visualization with trust and like agreement, there was a miracle. So this stuff is real, and I'm so glad that I like learned that when I did and applied the knowledge, because then I was able to have, sure enough, I had my baby and a natural water birth, crazy fast. Well, not, it wasn't crazy fast. It was just crazy intense. And yeah, I didn't even notice my ribs like at all during the labor. I was distracted by the other pain. But anyway, it didn't matter because he's here and safe and whole, and that was a crazy, awesome miracle. So if you are here for more, we're going to pick up next time. Like I said, save the playlist, go back to the beginning and start from the first video if you want to catch all of the other things that we've covered. And be blessed, be well, be free.